We on? We're good? Can you guys hear? Okay. All right. We'd like to welcome everybody here. It is Tuesday, June 13th, 2023. We are going to go ahead and get started by indicating first who's here for our board meeting. Kim, go ahead.
Cameron Chandler.
Connie Burgess.
Chris Wynn. Karen Winder.
Clark Nelson.
Todd Hauer, Rich Nye.
And Nicole McDermott. And Julie Jackson will run up here and indicate that she's here as well.
Julie Jackson.
Thanks, Julie. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with our capital and construction update by Don, Justin, and Chris.
It will just be Chris and I
Justin
today.
and Chris.
So if that's okay, we'll jump right in. Security projects, the two that we're working on currently that are in construction are Oakwood and Woodstock. And I'll show you some slides. You've probably seen those in your board packet. But primarily, the space is ready to go, minus we're waiting on the millwork. And as soon as the millwork can get on site, they can get that installed and then they can finish up. But for the most part, we're just kind of waiting for the millwork. We're on schedule. They were able to get all the demolition and the other construction done in a very good time frame. And so it does look like they're sitting because they are sitting and waiting for the cabinets to show up. And once those do, then we'll put it in. We're still hoping we can turn it over ahead of time, but we are on schedule. So good news there. This is Oakwood, and then Woodstock is very much the same look, a little different color, but it's the same layout and the same design. So good news there that we are progressing nicely. Any questions on those two security projects? We'll jump into some of the other projects going on. We've got re-roofing going on at Westbrook and Arcadia, and as the slide says, about 80% complete, so that's going well. Always tough when we get afternoon showers every afternoon. Who knew that we had rain every afternoon? But they have to tighten it up and make sure that it's watertight before they leave for the evening. The Bonneville Junior High stage lighting project is ongoing and should be wrapped up this summer. There was a little bit of a struggle to get some of the electronic equipment in town, but once they get their hands on that, that should progress and get moving. And then the Cottonwood High School auditorium sound system, the last I heard this late last week was that our internal guys, Troy Anderson and the Granite Builders team, are progressing nicely and just wrapping up a few odds and ends here and there, but it's coming along very nicely. So good news there for Cottonwood and then soon to be Bonneville on finishing up.
And Justin, will those two projects be done when school starts?
Yes, Cottonwood should be done within a week or two.
Okay, great.
And Bonneville will go into the summer, but will be done. Knock on wood, that everything arrives, then it'll be done this summer, absolutely. And they'll do everything they can. If they are waiting for parts, they'll just get everything done, and then if there's something out there, long lead or whatever. If no other questions, we'll jump to the next three. This school consolidation projects, William Penn, Woodstock, and Oakwood. They have been up, the contractor's been up to those three schools. Demolition has happened in all three, and it's progressing nicely. So those are moving forward. We have carpet ordered, waiting in a warehouse, waiting to be delivered once they're ready to get the carpet in there, and so those are moving nicely as well. We don't have any pictures because it was mostly demolition, so if you don't have any questions, we'll jump to the next slide, which is the Mill Creek slope stabilization. If you recall, last month in May, you approved a purchase or a PO to hire a contractor to go and fix a pipe that's been there for some 20 plus years. But the Salt Lake County flood control folks wanted a little bit of work around that to make sure that it drains into the creek nicely. And so our contractor jumped on that. We had to work with the LDS Church to come down and onto their property and then to get down to this hill, and I'll show you some pictures here. You can see the creek, and the large rock cobble is what they put on both sides of the creek bed. And here again, on the one on the right, if you see if I can get the cursor over there, if you can see where my cursor is, this pipe was there. They put this concrete collar around the pipe, then trimmed the pipe off nicely. So the whole point with this is to avoid erosion happening at the entry point of where the pipe comes down and dumps into the creek. So The Salt Lake County folks were thrilled. They want to use this as one of their model projects. As we pulled out of the site, we had to put some erosion control blankets down to help the hill. This is not our property, but we worked out an agreement with the LDS Church that while we're down there cleaning out, I think they said 8 dump trucks full of dead trees and old. It was a fire hazard, and we pulled all that out, and it looks very, very nice. Super good project, and excited about how it. And our neighbors are thrilled too. So the fire threat is down. The pipe issue is gone away. So it was a good project. And it was quick. I think we were in there 2.5 weeks is what it took. So that was nice. The Cottonwood Teen Center. Some of you were at the groundbreaking where we turned over bark mulch, but that is progressing. They've started demolition on the inside. There's some abatement that need to happen, but that's, I think, wrapped up, and now they can continue to tear that apart and then reconstruct it and get that going. So that's exciting news and for the Cottonwood High School. There is a small project that, back up one. Because of the teen center going in the location it's going, we had to displace a couple of things, a couple of classrooms, working with Mr. Douglas, the principal, and others. The one other location is the athletic director, or is it the assistant athletic director, had to be relocated, and there's a spot. We're working on that internally. Our own crews are modifying the space so that they have a landing spot this fall. So we're working on that. The ESSER HVAC projects are ongoing. Steve Forbes and his team of engineers that we've hired are working, and contractors are working like crazy to get all these, as many as they can, wrapped up this summer, and they'll go into the fall and into the spring next year. But there's a long list you see there of different projects and where they're at. Anything from here to Fox Hills to Hunter. Any questions about any of those? Okay, field turf. Oh, excuse me. We are in the process of replacing 3 high school football synthetic turf fields, Olympus, Kearns, and Cottonwood. And they have torn out those fields and are in the point of going back and adding the irrigation, or not the irrigation, the what we call the water cannon, so they can cool those fields down before game time. Putting those in. At Cottonwood's a little more involved. We're going to have the opportunity to bring down the long jump and the high jump that have been up on the hill and to the south. We're going to bring those down in the stadium, so that'll be a nice. All the track events can be right there, which would be nice, with the exception of the throwing that has to happen on the grass, but the javelin and the discus shot put, but all the jumping and run events can be down there. So that's those are moving, and those are on track. All of those to be done. I believe the date in the contract was I think it's Monday the 28th, if that's right. 28th is the right date. I don't know if that's a Monday of July. So, I know Clark, you'd asked before, but that will be. They would like them all summer long, but if we can get the 20th of July, they can get out there and get going on fall, not only football, but other the track and other things they want to do. These are the 3 high schools. Cottonwood, I mentioned that, and that's where we're just moving along. There's a couple of slides of Olympus High where they started first, and so you can see they've actually torn all the infield grass, the synthetic turf out, and it's down to the road base there. They've got to dig a ditch there for the drainage system and also for the water cannon. So you can see that's going on. That's a Cottonwood there.
Hey, Justin.
Yes.
Maybe this is a Ben question. Have we sent anything out to these communities to say why we're replacing the field? I've had a couple of patrons say to me, "Why are we replacing this? It looked really good." And I'm like, well, it didn't function as well as it looked.
Right.
Have we done anything on that?
We've not done anything formal on that. On a lot of these projects, we just push the information out on our GSD Future website, or we rely on the school to communicate some of those smaller school level projects. But I can see I'm always interested at the board getting questions on these types of things, because For instance, we had some questions about the Taylorsville wing, and we're putting together a mailer specific for that particular community about the progress on that particular project. So if there is a need to communicate something, I'm very interested in making sure that we're getting that information out in the channels that we have available to us.
I had 2 patrons and a legislator ask me about it
Okay.
at Olympus. And the other thing, I don't know if there's something we can do about it, but, you know, I'm like passing Olympus a lot. And I see people, like I saw a guy throwing his kid's bike over the fence, and then they climbed, this is a dad, climbing the fence so that they could walk the track while it's closed and everything. I don't know I think that's why I'm thinking there needs to be some discussion with this community that like, no, this is just closed, you know? So.
Yes, there does.
Just-
Let's have that conversation.
I felt like there was a communication already, but I don't know, just, there's some
Something to think
feedback.
about.
Now you
Yeah.
take it and be an expert, run with that, okay?
I think, yeah, you're right. I know there was communication with the school and all those involved with the sports because they were excited about the new turf, but that may not have filtered down to a dad and a bicycle and a kid that wants to walk a track. Yeah, right. So I see your point. Westlake, some of you got to tour that a week ago Monday with the FEMA tour that we had and some of the news coverage there. I think that was a good tour. I'll jump into some of the slides, but you can see that I'll walk those through. The slide on the left is the 2-story teacher collaboration hub and media center, which is super exciting. The media center is up top, and then below is the teacher collaboration hub. That looks directly south on the south property line there. And we've got places where we're actually hanging drywall, and then places like on the right where it's the last phase to get started, and therefore it's always trailing, but that's where we're just still dealing with structural steel. So you have all those, the different phases. Roof decking in place over the kitchen, you can see there. The chiller is being piped now that it's in place. Somebody asked me on the tour, I can't remember who that was, if there's windows, and here's your answer. There are windows, 1 there in the choir room, and then there's 3 there in the band room. I can't remember who asked me that, but one of the board members asked me that, and there's your answer. And you can see the risers there.
That was me.
Okay. So, yes, there are windows. How's that? There was no change orders that need to go to the board, but we did want to point out, I'm backing up just real quick, we did receive a deductive change order, which is always good news, of $194,000. So I wanted to celebrate that for a brief moment because that's a big number. We worked with, it had to do with the technology in the classrooms, and by doing some things that still met our needs, we were able to save quite a bit of money. We were super excited about that. So I wanted to highlight that one for just a brief moment. Any questions about Westlake before we let Chris talk about Skyline and Cypress? Okay. I'll let Chris talk about Skyline and Cypress.
And before any of you ask where the crumble cookies are, Justin ate them all, so sorry about that.
It's not sure.
Skyline High School, fortunately, even with our afternoon showers, we have been able to accomplish a great deal of work this month. It's amazing when it gets into the 70s how much more work you can get done than when it's in the 30s. So quite a bit of progress has been done. The athletics phase portions on the north side are near completion. There's just a few minor items around the tennis courts and some other areas. The softball field, actually, I believe they got to play right before the season ended. Phenomenal field. And then there are some other items right next, just south of the athletics building. The new front entryway is being completed right now, the new front vestibule and panels and concrete slab and different things. So then the final look for what that looks like, I know everyone's been using that building quite a bit, but they've always kind of been going in what would be an interior door, and now that vestibule is nearing completion. On the administration wing, we had 9 concrete floor pours in a 14-day period. So there was a lot of concrete work that's been done, and now it's a lot further along with ductwork even than a lot of the pictures you'll see here. The pictures are about in that 10 to 12 day behind, just in order for us to hit the board thing. So, and I'm sure when you look at Cypress, you're like, I was just there. It's further along than what the photos show. Structural steel is complete along quite a bit of areas. The one that's super exciting is where all of the cafeteria and student gathering areas is starting to take shape and look like a building. The roofing work has already commenced among the F and G portions of the academic building, and because we got the deck in, quite a bit of framing has also taken place since these photos that you'll see here. In here, the tennis courts are amazing. They're wonderful. It'll be nice too when they're fully completed. And as I indicated, the softball game, they were able to use that before school got out. This is the courtyard in between the academic and the athletic building. I believe that's mostly poured at this point.
It is, yeah, the second photo there.
Like I said, the photo there, but it's even a little further
You're right.
than it is right now. So that's that nice little courtyard that we have in between the academic and the athletic building.
This is the courtyard that we were standing at when we were at Cypress, and we were saying this courtyard's internal. That's what we're looking at here at Skyline is the internal one, or the internal one. It shouldn't go as long as eternal. At the end of it will be what Chris was mentioning, will be the new entrance into the athletic building. And so that's what will close that courtyard in. It'll be a nice space for the kids and the teachers, that it will be entirely closed in courtyard. And then there's a bigger one to the south that's not closed in that we also saw at Cypress, but this one is the closed in one.
Yeah, there's actually a trophy case on that western side of that entryway. So it's a two-sided trophy case. You can see it from, as you walk into the athletic building, we'll display all the Skyline trophies, but you can actually also see it from the courtyard side as well.
So on this picture on the left,
Yes.
the building on the left, that is the pool, am I right?
That's the gym, but
That's the gym. The pool would be
Oh, that's the
behind
gym.
us.
The pool
Yes.
is that way, and
Yeah,
then this
the football
is,
field sticks out on that.
okay, and this is the academic building
This
that
is
we're
actually
just,
the administration building
But-
to the right.
part of the academic building, but yes, this is specifically the
it's the
admin office.
administration wing of
Yes.
the academic building, right?
Correct.
Very
Okay.
precise, thank you.
Well, I just was a little nervous that we had an administrative building that I was not aware of for a minute.
It's the administrative wing of the academic building.
Thanks.
You don't remember approving that?
I didn't remember that.
We were standing on the dirt version of that at Cypress a couple weeks ago. So this is the tilt panels for that southern portion of that. That last picture you saw was the northern portion of the administration wing. This is those tilt panels that are shown on the floor and now are the southern portion of that same building. And the large courtyard that Justin was talking about is just south of the picture on the right-hand side. That right-hand wall on the other side of that is the large courtyard.
The courtyard, the common space at both schools will be fabulous. This will be fabulous. It'll be even more fabulous in 2 years when we're able to take down the old auditorium, and then you can see the mountains from there. But there'll be a 2-year block there as we transition.
And as I indicated, this is the cafeteria footings and everything they're getting ready to put in for the large gathering spaces as part of the academic building. And then, like I said, from the inside, it's really starting to shape up like a building with all of the decks poured and the framing going in and the ductwork going in and the fire pipe and everything going on. It's rapidly approaching looking like a building, and the roofing has started on it. So just as you can see, there's still some walls that are still being tilted. But this was part of how we, in working with Hughes, how we were going to make sure that the building got completed, done on time, and not necessarily wait for those panels to be completed in order to start the steel structure. We're actually shaved about 4 months off in the last couple months in order to try to make sure that we're in next July. Changes on Skyline are of an administrative nature approved within the contingency by staff. Any questions on Skyline?
So are you ready to commit to a completion date for Skyline?
So,
I tried to ask that softly.
yeah, so the contract schedule right now for complete completion of Skyline is December of '26. The academic building right now is scheduled for August, but we are
August of '24.
August of '24, and we are expecting them to be done much sooner than that. When I say expecting, we are pushing them to be done this first, second week of July, so we have time to move everything out of the existing administration building into its proper space, not just putting it in the building. So if you've never been part of a high school move, it's a staggering amount. It's like it's a children of Israel level migration, so to speak, I guess, for lack of a better comparison term. So right now, we are still pushing Hughes very hard on shaving another 3 or 4 weeks off of that in order to complete. Some work that there's actually some work on the very southern end of that building that actually goes into the next phase that they have to complete in order to occupy that building. The servers for the computers and the stairway that was originally shown in the wrong phase have to be completed in order for us to occupy that building. So we will be pushed right up against the existing administration building, and they need to shave this last 3 weeks off in order for us to get in on time next summer.
We just had a meeting today to talk about all the reloads that you see on Upland Drive. There's the cafeteria and some other things we talked about in next summer, a year from now. Those all have to be moved because Hughes needs to move that next phase to get the auditorium done. So we had an internal discussion today about when school gets out next year and how we can move those. We have to bring in some temporary reloads in the back for a little while, but it is, as Chris said, Skyline is just, it's a whole process about everything. Hughes is one element, a big part of it, but there's all these other pieces we've got to bring in place too. So we're constantly looking at the schedule and talking through all the different logistics.
And one of the major logistics is Hughes wants the administration building emptied so they can start knocking it down so they can start the next phase. And it's like, well, this is entirely in your hands, guys. If you get this building done next June, then you can have all summer to play with it, to knock it down and get ahead of the game. We just need somewhere to move the entire school in order to do that.
We're even doing some abatement right now in the A building, the academic building, this summer as much as we can, and then the kids will come back, but just to get ahead for next summer because we know how crazy next summer is going to be for this entire district.
It actually is probably going to save 3 or 4 weeks off of what next summer looks like by getting that abatement done this summer. Just means they'll be on concrete, but it'll work. Any other
If you guys
questions?
start moving in July, I'm bringing everybody cookies for sure. Because I think that is the most exciting
Crumble cookies?
news I've heard. Well, I didn't want to advertise for anybody.
Any and all cookies,
Yeah.
except non-denominational cookies, it works. So that is the constant goal of every week's conversation
I
is,
think what Julie said is that she will be there to help move.
you know,
Oh, I totally will come to help move. And I will bring all my children.
Me too.
They are committed right now.
right about now, your children like, I sense a disturbance in the force, something, I'm being promised to do something.
I'll be there.
That'd be great. I'll be there with photos. It'll be great. And moving stuff. If we can move that out, I'll be happily moving as well. How's that? So that's the goal. So Cypress, many of you had the opportunity to tour and visit. Cypress is actually going really well. We've had a lot of concrete has gotten poured in this last month, like I said, it's amazing when you get nice weather and we get a nice little dust control storm every afternoon to keep the dust from going down, and it hasn't created too much mud. Quite a bit of steel has been erected in the last 6 weeks. The academic wing walls, many of you saw, many of them. I think even if those of you who had the first opportunity to tour had seen the difference between the first tour and the second tour, I think there were 6 additional panels that were erected in between the times of the 2 tours. Quite a bit has been done. We need some window frames and glass to get caught up on some things, quite a bit of the interior framing. And as you saw, for those of you who were in some of the locker rooms, the fire marshal sprinkler approvals and permitting were completed, and so now we're rocking out the drywall, the ceilings in the bathrooms as well in the gymnasium area. So it's starting to look like, the athletic building is starting to look like a building, one that you could actually live in. So the retaining wall work has been going on, quite a bit of work, I said, in the auditorium as well. Phenomenal views. We've actually got some of the roofing material on the auditorium now, and constantly pouring concrete, constantly having a lot of work. The work in the pool area, I believe, is going to be dug out in the next couple weeks. Is that what the latest update was?
It was this, yeah.
From today was that they're going to be starting the digging out of the pool work. And then actually these backfill and band and orchestra areas are poured.
Yeah.
Some of these are poured now since these pictures have been taken. And just moving forward very quickly, a lot of the steel structure, even from these pictures, that steel structure in that area is actually completed as of the last few days. So a tremendous amount of work going on. Some of the site work is starting to go on as well. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to, and Connie, this was a picture we found. We wanted to, because you had asked the question when we were out on site. If you look, it kind of looks like a giant cookie sheet, right? You've got some cookies cut out here. These are the concrete panels. These, the shorter ones, these are only 1 story tall, not 3 stories tall, but you can see the different panels where the door openings or window openings are. You can see that there's three rows of panels that have been poured and ready to be picked up and stood. Then behind that, you can see a bunch are being framed. And all that is rebar, structural rebar running every which way in there to give it the strength. That they will fill that with concrete, but that rebar is what's in all of those panels. And so that kind of gives you what it looks like before they pour it, and then as they pour the concrete, what happens. So
I appreciate that, thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah, we can call it a concrete panel, but in essence, it's a steel panel with a concrete on the outside. So that's what it takes from a reinforcement standpoint. So in terms of changes, just the 2, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. So there are 2 changes being brought before the board today. The best way to describe this is when we came on board and we started going through there's been a fairly substantial backlog of changes on both projects that were not complete, and we're in various stages of product. These 2 changes for Cypress were part of the change, and probably the 2 most, I would say, important changes from Cypress's standpoint that we feel like needed to be resolved. The first change is for the phenolic panels. And this change actually goes back into last October, November time period is when it originated, long before we came on board. This was a situation where, first, it's a twofold thing. There was some information because there was some dispute with the contractor as to what their responsibility was for toilet partitions to the district. And that was actually satisfactorily resolved in the district's favor, and they provided a certain dollar value with that. At the same time, the district was resolving that issue with the contractor and the architect. The district was evaluating the nature of the panels themselves. So the panels that were specified were in HDPE plastic that they had put at some existing schools that were just not performing very satisfactorily. They were supposed to be the latest, greatest kind of a panel. There were some quality issues. There were some durability issues. Is that a fair way to put that, Justin? And so in the course of them not having bought the panels yet, it was explored going back to the more substantive phenolic panels. And so the district, in doing its due diligence here, requested that the contractor price switching back to these panels versus what was specified, as the newer panels didn't seem to be working as well. And so this is a request by the district to upgrade the panels within the project to the for the $68,889.70 to the more substantive panels. Is that a fair way to say that? Phenolic panels. So the district staff is requesting, because from a long-term standpoint, and our recommendation is to approve this change, because in the long-term interest of the district, they'll last longer and or be a better maintenance overall cost to the district. So that's the first change. The second change is probably quite a bit more complex, at least from our standpoint, and that's cost escalation. And the best way to describe this is this is a change that is substantiated by the contract. Because of the long-term duration of these of these builds, the district at the time of execution of contract had a provision within the contract to allow the contractor, if they encounter a demonstrated price increase in materials, because cost of materials have been skyrocketing over the last few years, is that if they could demonstrate that the district would agree to pay for that cost increase. Now, this change originated last August, and according to the research that I've done, there's been at least 2 price increases since then.
And it was also we worked it out with purchasing, where we didn't want to see a contractor be so penalized or hurt that they would go out of business and lose a contract, and then we had to find somebody else. But, so they have to take the first 12%. So the first 12% increase is their responsibility. It was above that 12%. If the costs arose above the 12%, where we would step in. And so there's been a few that have had cost escalation demonstrated above 12%, and that's this item that we're bringing forth today. It's an unfortunate large number, but it is over that 12%. There's several steps they have to go through to show that it's not just a plea or an ask, but it's actually demonstrated cost increase or escalation. And so that was in the contract. I would like to think that we're done with cost escalations and materials. I know that Westland, our contractor, has worked very well, BDK, since they've been on board, in trying to get as many materials ordered on hand in a warehouse, stored. We have flooring already stored in some of our closed elementaries that they're just, if you will, right now a warehouse of materials, so that we can avoid these kind of things. So we have tried as best we can to jump up, as has the contractor, to buy as many things as they can beforehand. It's unfortunate, some items, this is lighting, and it's usually those electrical items that seem to can kind of get us, and this one certainly has. We've been wrestling with this for quite some time, going back and forth, trying to, one, they have to prove that these costs are real and that they've been, that they're a real cost, and then they have to show they've done everything they can to meet the requirements.
Now, since Cypress really only has phase 2 to go, we wouldn't anticipate any more cost escalations on the lighting and electrical, right? Because we've just purchased everything we need.
Certainly not the lighting. Yeah.
Okay.
I would think it's a safe yes.
And I thought I remembered in my consent agenda when I was reading about this that it said particularly in the lighting industry there's been cost escalation. So I'm just setting my expectations. Is this something we expect to see at Skyline or at Westlake as well?
We haven't crossed that bridge with Westlake. It's a little smaller building, so maybe we'll have to see. But Skyline, there has been escalation. The difference at Skyline is how that contract was. It was a CMGC contract, and so there was some contingency money built in to those numbers, and the contractor can use some of those, a percentage of that contingency to thwart off cost escalation. There has been cost escalation at Skyline on a lot of items, and they've used their contingency, their portion of that contingency to buy that down, if you will. And they know there's only a certain amount, and so they're being careful as they can. But we've seen the same thing at Skyline in this regard.
Okay, thanks.
So, if I could just add a couple things, Justin. So when we came on board, this was probably what I would call the highest priority resolvement change order. Is that fair enough to say? Just in terms of the electrical contractor and the general contractor were like, yes, we're being impacted and we're notifying you, but they weren't really working towards resolving it. Is that, I don't know if that's fair enough to say. There are certain terms that the contract requires them. First of all, they had to demonstrate the actual impact in dollar values. And they were, and the other thing is that they were required by the contract to actually procure those items. And they had not done either of those things. And we'd been working with Westland to resolve that so we could get this change order resolved. And as indicated in the documentation, nearly $300,000 was removed off of this change order in the process of them actually identifying it from their original claim, which was north of $700,000. It's frustrating, and as I indicated in the thing, and as Justin indicated, his staff and us have been working very diligently to resolve any and all changes regarding escalation, not to let anything hang out like this. We can't keep buying things for an increased price for the same item. You know, like I said, it's governed by the contract, but to try to resolve all of this to prevent any further mitigation, I think has been the district's goal, certainly, and we've been working very hard on this.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
You mentioned that this first was discovered or raised. I'm not quite sure, but you made reference to clear back in August of last year, and that there were 2 price increases that have occurred since then. So, am I understanding correctly that because of Westland's inaction, for lack of a better word, there's even higher cost that's being expended here because they could have purchased those under the terms of the contract back in August or September or whatever that timeline should have looked like, but because of their delay,
So
the cost was even higher than it needed to be?
yeah, so initial impact from my documentation, Justin, you can correct me here. You've lived it. I've been documenting it. The initial notice of impact without dollar value was provided on August 11th. An additional documentation and additional costs on August 29th, and then on January 20th, and then on February 23rd. That was about the time that we came on board and we demanded action with actual prices according to the terms of the contract, in which case that was provided in, I believe it was in end of March, beginning of April, that we actually got pricing. So even though they had been notifying of impacts, they hadn't demonstrated that it would actually think. And yes, that was our point of contention with Westland and the lighting contractor, is that they were failing to meet the terms of the agreement and failing to meet the terms of the thing by not actually, first of all, having purchased it, which is the first trigger, and second of all, not actually providing an actual dollar value that we could analyze. And so, because they drug their feet, and if you read my letter, basically you can argue that they have caused part of this impact. However, the way that the contract reads basically says once they meet these terms that they have met that. Now, I do not endorse in any way, shape, or form the way that Westland has completed this task. And do I feel like they caused? I feel that they've contributed to that. However, the district is meeting their contractual obligation, and Westland has as well. There's a reason why it's 300 grand less, and it's not just the first 12%, if that makes sense. 12% of 700,000 is 84,000, not 288,000 less. So we have advanced that argument to Westland, and this is part of the negotiated agreement. If that's fair to say, Justin.
Yeah, and there was another, besides Chris mentioned, you have to purchase the product before you could ask for it, meaning you have to go out and buy it, and then it's like a reimbursement, if you will. So they hadn't done that, and they hadn't broken it out. There was some resistance with some of the, not even the electrical contractor, but some of the suppliers that supply lighting. And on a building that big, you've all had a chance to walk through it. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but there's like 15 different suppliers of all the different lights. It's not just one supplier. It may even be 20. There's a large number of suppliers, and some of them were on board and some of them weren't, but they couldn't get everybody together and ultimately get the cost in. And so that's what this went on for a while. The other thing is, at the very first onset of this in the contract, you as a subcontractor had to say, hey, we may potentially be harmed in this. And you had to more or less sign up saying that we could be, if we're an electrical lighting supplier, we could be ones that might be harmed in this. So you had to sign up, and you also had to submit a schedule of when you planned on purchasing those. They are purchasing the lights ahead of their planned schedule. So to say that it cost us more, it's tough because they are buying them ahead. If we would have waited until when the schedule said, we would be paying more. So in essence, we are saving, we whittled it down, we are saving more than we could have if we let them buy the lights when they were scheduled to, if that makes sense. If we'd have bought them in August, could we have saved some money? Yeah, there was probably a little money to be saved there, but there were so many hurdles that they hadn't overcome. And we kept saying, remember, this is here to hurt, not to hurt you, but to help you so you don't go out of business, but you have to meet all these steps. And to date, they hadn't, or until now, they hadn't. And so that's a tough one, Clark, because if they had bought these lights when they were supposed to, we'd be paying more than we are now. So I like to think that we have saved money by buying them now, and we did, in fact, like Chris said, whittle that down from, I think the initial number was 700 something. I can't remember the exact number.
710 and change.
Yeah. So it's a tough one.
If I may follow up, without getting too far into the weeds in what constitutes them meeting their burden of proof, who and or what group of individuals is involved in determining whether that burden, or determining that in fact they have now met that burden of proof? Is that you collectively? Where does that all fall?
So district staff, the architect firm, and BDK both reviewed each of the line items, and there's a considerable amount of correspondence back and forth rejecting their first couple claims, at least when we came on board, as not meeting that burden of proof. They would provide a list. Here's all the light fixtures that have changed in price. And where's the price? Well, it'll be about this. It's like, and have you ordered it yet? These are all steps that are very clearly delineated in the contract. And so there was probably at least when we came on board, and not counting the other correspondence beforehand, there was at least several months of rejections and resubmittals before we felt it met the burden of proof. But yes, we are recommending it, having received sufficient information to believe that it meets the burden of proof required by the contract.
Our first blush would have been our electrical engineer hired by the architect, and they specified and designed lighting, and they're the ones that would have been really key on vetting that and looking at that. Bringing BDK on board, this was one of their first assignments, as Chris mentioned, and so they had a chance to look at that and review that as well, and it wasn't a one pass only. This has been, again, going on.
Multiple. This has been 3 months in the process since,
Since you've been here.
yeah, 4 months almost since we've been here. Like I said, this was literally, when we first came on board, we were like, what are the hottest ticket items, for lack of a better, more precise term? What are the greatest exposures to the district? What are the greatest impacts besides schedule that we knew was the greatest thing? But what, from a financial standpoint, what is the greatest exposures the district has? And this change, getting to this point, has been one of our highest priorities.
One more follow-up, if I may. If Westland were to make another similar mistake, what teeth does the contract that we have with Westland have?
It doesn't. The clause is what the clause is. It doesn't say if you screw up, you only get one, unless I'm
Right.
But with
unless
BD
I'm misspeaking.
But with BDK here now, we're going to assume that this is, I mean, this is the whole reason why we hired them, right? So that we don't have this happening.
No, I understand. I'm just wondering if contractually, if there's any additional teeth beyond
No.
the clauses that we've already talked about.
As Justin mentioned, his staff has been working very diligently with both contractors to buy and store as much of this product. We've actually, Matt and Paul, who work for me, have been, and with Ashton, and I think even Rich has spent quite a bit of time going to the different warehouses. We're like, just, our message has been, get it here.
They can bill for it once it's in a bonded warehouse, and so once we get notice that lighting or carpet or whatever is, not carpet because we bought that, but other items, then we have to go in inventory and make sure, yeah, there's 7,000 toilets, or whatever we're looking at, and then we can go ahead and release the payment on that. Once we know it's in a bonded and insured warehouse, then we can do that. So that's what Chris is speaking
We're
of.
trying to not spend $500,000 more for the same thing that
Right.
we've already bought, again.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that a fair way to put that? Is that a blunt enough way to put that?
Yeah. I hope so.
And I think Justin's staff has been working, making sure that whatever district resources are had to mitigate this, that they've been working very diligently on this and making sure that any and all future changes involving escalation are being mitigated as much as we can at this point.
Both Hughes and Westland, Hughes at Skyline, Westland at Cypress, have taken steps to secure as much as they can. Some of it's stored in some of their warehouses, or they've figured out other ways too. So it is a team effort. Would we have liked the lighting one to go better? Yes, we certainly would. In hindsight, I think we'd all be better. But again, I'm hoping the building, the direction we're going, and we got the lighting now. I hope there's a lot of mechanical units on site now. You probably saw some of those. Can't control the future, but I feel like we're trying to do everything we can to mitigate these unfortunate dollar expenditures and buy as much as we can and get it on site now. So we're doing the best we can. I appreciate BDK. They've been a breath of fresh air and a lot of wisdom in looking at these things. And I think our design team with our engineers have also rose to the occasion now and looking at things as well. So I feel like as a team, we're better, we're getting sharper, and I think we are working together. I don't feel like we're not working together. Even with Westland, I feel like we're working there.
100%, and especially with the hard bid contractor, I think they've been very responsive to the district's efforts to mitigate some of these costs and to mitigate things. I don't think the district was ever not holding them accountable in terms of the requirements of the contract. I think that was always the case. I think it just needed to be resolved and not hang out there any further to try to, to help them help us, if that's a better way. Is that a fair way to put that? It's just they would come to the table and be told, no, you don't meet the terms of the contract. But sooner or later, it just needed to get ordered and get done. And I think that having those sit-down conversations is what's allowed us to resolve this at this point is, okay, you can't get out of your own way. What can we do to help you get out of, quit hurting us, I guess is what is that a fair way to say that, Justin?
It is.
Because I think the district was always holding them accountable to make sure they met the terms of the contract. They just needed to to get it done.
And if I can say one more thing, we had built into the Cypress project a 1% contingency that's in the 166 that you approved. And that 1% is 1.6 million, I think is the number, there's some change. Both these change orders today, our grand total is still below that. Not much below that, but we're still below that. So to date, nothing we've done is an increase at Cypress to the overall budget, if that makes sense. Is that contingency almost gone? It is, and that's a concern. We are monitoring very closely and working through, trying to find no-cost solutions to problems that we've come up with. But right now, we are below that contingency. And so even though this is a change order that you vote on and decide to approve or not approve, we're still below that 1.6, which is built into the 166, if that makes sense.
Rich, did you have something? Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Sorry for the length today.
We appreciate your help on this.
Thank you.
Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
We have need of an executive session for the purpose of character and competence and collective bargaining. I will entertain a motion for that.
I make a motion that we go into executive session for the purpose of character and composition and bargaining.
I second it.
All right, we have
That
a
was
motion.
close, Julie. Just never do this.
We have a motion and a second for the movement into executive session for the purpose of character and competence and collective bargaining. This is a roll call vote. Will you please state your name, Clark?
Clark Nelson, yes.
Karen Winger, yes. Chris Wynn, yes.
Connie Burgess, yes.
Kim Chandler, yes.
Julie Jackson, yes.
And Nicole McDermott, yes. All right, we will reconvene up in the conference room try to make it fast in 5 minutes, guys.